Hi, I'm Mariko Sashiko. Today I have this cute little nightingale. It's Sashiko and it's a sewing kit. The Sashiko on the back is just from a simple template drawn on there. And if you open the little bird wing, there are all the things you need for a little emergency sewing kit. Here's what you need for the inside. Scissors, thread, needles there. Got some little buttons, safety pins. And those will all fit inside when we've made it. So we'll put those to one side and have a look what we need to do the nightingale. So I have some circles of blue fabric, 2 of those, same size batting cut, little square and some stiffener to make the beak, some Velcro, and then the little music for the pocket. I'm going to put Sashiko on one side and I'm going to use this little template for that. Position the template in place. Make sure you do this on the right side of the fabric. My fabric is plain, so it doesn't make a difference. And this is the Jousius pen that's heat erasable. And I'm just going to make sure this template doesn't move. You can tape it or something if you want to, and fill in these little markings until it's all complete. I think that should be it. Making sure it doesn't move, I'm just lifting up and making sure that I haven't missed a place. So I'm going to begin the Sashiko now. I've threaded my needle. I'm using some white Sashiko thread. This is kind of the medium or regular weight one. I pretty much use that for everything. It seems always to work out well. And of course this is the best bit. This is the part that I really enjoy doing. So I started with a knot because the back of this is going to be hidden. And I'm just going to do load as many stitches as I can onto the needle. Depends whether or not I'm on a curve. And of course, don't forget the important part of doing your tension control, rubbing your finger over the stitches or stretching your fabric a little bit every time you do a row of stitching. I'm going to continue doing my Sashiko. I'm going to work this whole back, and then when I've finished it, we'll come back and complete making the sewing kit. This is the batting that's going to be in the centre. The Sashiko is complete, and so I'm going to lay that on top of the batting. This will be the next piece to lay on the top, but before I do that, I have to make the pocket and attach it to this piece. I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along there, and then fold it so the right sides are out, and it will fit halfway down this circle, and then it'll be sewn around the edge. Let's just sew this seam. I've pressed this. Before I go any further, I need to add some Velcro. So I'm cutting a piece that's about 1.5 inches long. It's easy to put this on now before the pocket is fastened to the nightingale bird. I've centered it in position. I'm just going to sew it on there. I'm doing a couple of back stitches and going round twice. I want to make sure that this is secure. Just trim off the little extra threads there. To put the other half of the Velcro on, make sure that you are going to attach it to the right side of the fabric. It's the part that will show. I'm just lining this up so that I can get the other part of the Velcro in the right position. I would just fold it back, lay it beside it, and when that's put back in place, that will usually come out just right. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that piece on just the same as the first piece. Now when you put these layers together, it's very important you get them in the right order. The piece with the pocket is face down, and the Sashiko is face up. That actually puts right sides together. And then the batting is on the very bottom. When you line all this up, and then you sew around the edge of all 3 layers. I'm going to leave an opening for turning, and I can feel the edge of the pocket there, and so there and there is where I'm going to leave my opening. Not only will I turn it through there, but I'll put the bird's beak in there as well. I'm just putting a few pins in here just to hold everything together. And now I'm just going to put it under the sewing machine and carefully sew around the edge. I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch seam. Now I'm just going to use a pair of scissors and trim this seam down closer to the edge, maybe only about 1/8 of an inch from the machine line. And then I'm also going to round and very carefully clip. I'm also trimming this batting down as much as possible so it's not bulky. Be careful not to cut the fabric though. Okay. So now I'm just turning this through to the other side. I'll just smooth all these edges out, make it look nice and round. This is my opening where I've turned it through, and I'm just going to make a neat curve, use a slip stitch to close it, but I also have to add in the beak. This is about a 1.5 inch square. I've fused some stiffening to it, and I'm just going to cut that extra piece off. Fold that into a triangle and then sew the edges closed. And for this, I'm just going to use a blanket stitch and Sashiko thread. And it really needs only a sewing down one side because the other side will be inside the seam. You just have to fit it in there and make sure you're sewing the side you really need to sew. I'm just doing a little blanket stitch along here. One side will be hidden because it'll be inside the body. I have done a few stitches at the edge though, just in case a little part of it shows. Right, I've pinned this together. It's not exactly perfect as I've pinned it, but as I sew, I'm just going to nudge it in place so it's all looks nice and neat. So I'm going to just bury my knot down here at the bottom before I actually start sewing. And just on this little bit, I'm just sewing on one side here. I'm not going to try and sew all the way through. So I have my nice curve in my fabric, and I'll just make sure I keep correcting that as I go along if it's out of place a little bit. There's just a couple of stitches I'm going to do down here at the bottom that are going to go through both sides. Need my thimble. And this part I'm just going to sew on as though I was doing applique. So it's just going into this side of the fabric of the beak and out through the fold. Because this is a little bit stiff, it is a little bit harder to get into the fold position, but it's only for an inch, so it's not that big a deal. And I'm just using my needle to turn that in each time that I sew, just to make sure it's all nice and smooth. One little piece there doesn't want to stay down at all. I have to correct it every time I take a stitch. That's alright. Alright, so we've reached this end of the beak here. Now we're going to go on and sew the navy blue pieces together. For this, I'm just doing the usual over sew stitch, and I'm not taking a very big bite out of the edge of the fabric. This pin is really getting in the way when you're doing this. One thing I could have done was just put a tacking stitch along here before I started, but I guess I just find it easier just to leave the pins in and keep untangling my thread from around them. Alright, so I'm going to go on and continue to sew to the end, and when I've done that, I'll rejoin back down here and just sew this other side of the beak here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I've hand sewn around the little curve where the beak is there, and now I'm just going to do a row of machining all the way around this edge to give it just a finished off look. So I'm going to sew fairly close to the edge. Trim my little threads off here. Now I'm going to fold down this flap as though it was a bird wing. And this is not lined up with the pocket. It starts at the top of the beak and it ends at the top of the pocket there. And then I'm just going to put a stitching line down the very edge of that to help it stay folded down. A little bit thick there for this to sew through. There we have the little bird. So my little bird just needs an eye now. So I tried out some blue in different sizes and a smaller one, but I like this. I like this big, shiny, bright eye for a bird. So that's the one that I'm going to sew on there, just on that corner. And it's only going to be on the flap. It's not going to go through all all the layers. So I'm just going to sew it on right there. Like the shininess of this eye, it makes me think of a little magpie. So let's just assemble our sewing kit. Some buttons, a few pins, a couple of little press studs there. This is just to carry around in your purse for emergencies. A few safety pins. Probably pin those up here actually, be better. Little scissors. and some cotton. Fasten it closed, and there we go. There's our little sewing kit to put in a handbag.